What's good, everybody? That's not what we normally say. There's a special reason I said it, and I can't wait to tell you why. Obviously, if you're watching this, you know why. However, this is another episode of Out of Our League. We have way too many panelists or people, guest hosts on here, so I'm just going to go down the gambit instead of ask y'all how you're doing, because I'm sure you're doing great. If not, I'm sorry. Please talk to me after the show. Al Treisman, Caesar Towers, Flora Jesse, GF Too Cool, Potter Pants 212, otherwise known as McKenna. Please be excited, Ben and Carl, Serenity Base. You guys are all awesome. Thank you for being here today. Our special guest, the person that I can't wait to talk to, Andrea Rene of What's Good Games. What's good?
What's good, PJ? You stole my opening.
The lawyers will be talking to you.
I know. You were saying something about the What's Good brand being expanded recently, so that's really cool.
She owns the.
I don't know if we're supposed to say it, so.
I mean, like it's fine. I mean, it's not expanded. I mean, we have ideas for future plans. Back when I came up with the idea for branding for the show, I had all these grand future plans about everything that we were going to do with the branding, which, requires a lot of resources, which we don't currently have now that it's just me and Brittany here at What's Good. But What's Good Games keeps us pretty busy. As some people may know that follow me on social media, I did launch What's Good Wine last year. During the pandemic, and I had a couple of extra episodes shot, but then I got pregnant and I kept it secret for a long time. And so everyone was like, "What's happening with What's Good Wine? Are you guys going to be doing more episodes?" And I was like, "Well, they're going to be coming back someday." And so I have some more ideas in the can for that. So hopefully, What's Good Wine is going to make a roaring re-entrance onto the scene. But that is really the expansion of the What's Good brand as of right now, and that's it.
So just to throw this out there, since we're kind of talking about it, Alex W at DODO4 on Twitter asks, why am I just hearing about What's Good Wine? And sounds like that's why.
That's why, because I only have, I think, 2 episodes, because I had all this stuff shot, and then, I didn't get around to editing it before I got pregnant last fall, and then I just kind of didn't end up doing it. I actually had like a pretty tough early part of my pregnancy. For anybody out there that's been pregnant knows how terrible the first trimester can be. And it was hard enough for me to just maintain the work that I was doing and then kind of keep everything secret. And so I was like, you know what? I only have so much mental bandwidth to get through each day. And the easiest thing for me to cut was like the thing that I had just started. And that was like a pet project for me and a passion project. And I was like, I'm going to come back to this. Just put a pin in it. And then I'm going to come back and it's going to be cool eventually. So that's why you haven't heard about it, because I haven't done very much with it.
Now, obviously, the What's Good Games. Well, first, why don't we just let everyone know, on the off chance they don't know who you are, who is Andrea Rene and what is What's Good Games?
Oh, what a big question. So let's start with what's Good Games, because that's an easier question to answer. What's Good Games is a video game podcast. My tagline at the beginning of every show is it's your source for video game news, commentary, analysis, and funny stuff every Friday. And we really built the brand of What's Good Games on the backs of the many years of industry experience that our crew has. Collectively, well, now we had to probably recalculate the number, but collectively we had 30 years of combined video game professional industry experience, which is really what sets us apart from a lot of other video game podcasts out there. Is that we all come from a background of working in the industry on different facets, whether it be in marketing and community or development, media, production. We really kind of brought a unique perspective to the table, not only because of our work in the industry, but because of the people that we know and the relationships that we have with people across the industry, which really kind of colors our commentary and our analysis in a very different way than people who are just merely enthusiasts of the medium of video games. And there's a ton of enthusiasts content out there, not too dissimilar to this content, right? Of people who are like, hey, I'm really passionate about this thing. But not every podcast out there has a group of women who come from a professional background. And that's really what What's Good Games is all about. And we really wanted to make sure that people know that we're a podcast and a community that's really doing our best to make sure everybody knows that they're welcome in our community. Because we as women for a long time were kind of told you don't get to be a gamer. Gaming is not for you. And we said, fuck that. We're going to be gamers because we love video games. And we really wanted to make a community that told people if somebody told you along the way that you don't belong in games, then you belong here. And we want people to know that. And I think we've really succeeded there. And I'm really proud of that. So yeah, What's Good Games? If you guys haven't heard of the show, you can find us pretty much on any platform that video game podcasts are on. And at youtube.com/What's Good Games is where our video version of it is. And hopefully you can join our community on Discord as well.
Links will be in the description.
Yeah, links. Finger guns.
Now, what about
and
yourself?
So I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. So for people who aren't familiar with me, I've been working in online digital media for about 15 years now. I come from a background in broadcast journalism and originally started my career in entertainment news, really wanting to be in red carpets and junkets, working in TV and film reporting specifically. And during the writer's strike that happened during the Great Recession, I kind of had to reconfigure or do like a hard pivot in my career because there just were no jobs for people who were just starting out in entertainment news. And that's when I was working with a hosting coach here in Los Angeles, and she said, the rise of expert hosts is happening in cable news right now. So it's like, do you work in design? Are you a chef? Do you do travel? And really the splintering of the cable networks was really just starting to happen there before we have the digital app OTT nightmare that we currently all live in. And so I was like, well, what could my expertise be? And the first thing a lot of people think of is, well, I really love music and TV and movies, but it's like, yeah, no, every Tom, Dick, and Harry can say that they're an expert in fucking movies, like, come on. So I was like, well, I really love playing video games. And at the time, there were very few on-camera positions for video games. So I was like, well, maybe this is something that I can go for. And there were even fewer women doing on-camera stuff for video games. And that's kind of how my career in video games started, is I just started looking for opportunities. And I was trolling Craigslist at the time. And back when Craigslist was like a safe place to be, it is not anymore. And I found a job for E3 that was hiring a reporter. And I was like, oh my gosh, E3, the Mecca. I want to go to E3. And I applied for the job and sent them, some links to the other stuff I was doing at the time. And I got hired, and the rest is history. I'm not going to bore you guys with the very long details of how I got from my very first video game job to where I am today. But essentially, I've worked with a lot of publishers like Square Enix and Warner Brothers and Xbox and Nintendo. And I've worked with a lot of outlets like IGN and GameSpot and Game Trailers. And after a couple of years freelancing, once I left my full-time senior producing role when I was at Defy Media working with Smosh Games and The Escapist, I was like, well, I have an opportunity here to do some stuff on my own for a while. And one Tim Geddes from kindafunny.com was like, why haven't you started your own thing yet? And I was like, Tim, you know why. It's a fuck ton of work. It's a lot of work. It's hard. It's a lot of hours. And I'm tired. I've been doing this for a really long time. He's like, but you should do it. You should start something. And then after stewing on, a pep talk from Tim for a while, I was like, all right, let me talk to some friends and see if they're interested. And I went to my friend, Alexa Ray Correa, who at the time was writing for GameSpot, and said, would you be interested in starting a show with me? And she's like, maybe. That sounds cool. And then she ended up leaving GameSpot and going to Elation and working on, more anime focused stuff, where she could actually start a video game podcast. And so she's like, let's do this. Hey, she's like, hey, do you know this girl, Brittany Brombacher? And I was like, yeah, I've done a PAX panel with Brittany. She's super cool. She was like, do you know that she has a podcast? And I was like, no, I didn't. And she's like, well, if we're going to start a podcast, she wants to be involved. And so we brought Brittany in, and then Brittany's like, do you know Steimer? You're friends with her, right? And I was like, yeah, no, I've been friends with Steimer for years. And she was like, well, I think she'd be interested. And I originally never asked or contemplated asking Steimer because at the time, Steimer was running her own Patreon called Steimer Says. I don't know if anybody remembers this, that Steimer had her own channel and was doing all of her own content on Twitch. And so I was like, well, I don't want to like go in and be like, hey, you should quit your thing and come join my thing. But turns out Steimer was really just waiting for a group moment because she was like, I really don't want to be a solo content creator. I would love to come and be part of what you guys do. And so we did what we call the first WGG con at my house in San Francisco back in 2017, where we were like, do we want this to be a thing? We really just had like a girls' sleepover weekend. That's really what we were doing, just chilling, like drinking a lot of wine, having fun in our pajamas. And I was like, but is there a business here? And if there is, like, what kind of business is this going to look like? What do we want to commit to? What can everybody do realistically? And what can we, accomplish? And that's kind of how What's Good Games was born.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Sort of a long-winded answer, but I
No,
left a lot
no.
out. But there's if you really want the whole Andrea Rene story, I did an episode of We Have Cool Friends on the Kind of Funny YouTube channel where I go into detail about more of my journey, and I don't want to do another 90 minutes of that here. It would
No,
be the
you're
whole
fine. That's 100% fine.
Maybe we don't have 90 minutes, but sure, let's go. No, I'm just kidding.
Now, you have been known to consume an adult beverage on shows here
I
and
don't know what
there.
you're talking about. What?
What do you mean?
With an exceptional passion for wine, as we were talking about earlier. What was the inspiration behind the idea of What's Good Wine? Was that something that you decided you wanted to break away from video games a little bit and start into something like that, or where did
Yeah,
that come from?
absolutely. So I'm a realist. Oh, I know that I'm going to age out of video game content at some point, right? Like I can sit back and pie in the sky go, "Oh yeah, someone's going to want to listen to me talk about video games when I'm 55." But that's just not the case, right? Like and like my interests are probably going to change as well. And as somebody who is passionate about being on camera and has always known that I want to be an on-camera presenter, I was like, what is the next phase of Andrea Renee's career? And to me, that is lifestyle hosting. That's the thing that I think I could move into and really be passionate about. On my career to becoming an on-camera presenter and producer in the world of digital media, I worked in restaurants. My first restaurant job was when I was 15 at a Bennigan's in Fargo, North Dakota. And I worked in restaurants all through high school, all through college. And then when I got to Los Angeles, trying to get my first on-camera jobs, I did what a lot of people do. I worked in bars and did a lot of bartending and a lot of serving. And so I have over 12 years, 13 years of restaurant industry experience and worked as a professional bartender for a really long time. And that's really where my knowledge and love of spirits and wine and beer comes from, is working as a professional bartender for a really long time. And I would love to do lifestyle content, and it just is such a crowded space. Not that video games isn't crowded now, but like I said, when I made the pivot to video games from entertainment news, the idea of me doing lifestyle content then wasn't possible. Because if you look at who all the on-camera talent is for lifestyle hosting now, if you look at like your Food Networks, your travel channels, HGTV, that kind of stuff, it's all people that are much older, late 30s, 40s, but really like late 40s, 50s, 60s. And so in order for me to get those jobs realistically, I needed to be older. And now I'm older. I made it, guys. um, I still masquerade as a 20-something sometimes, but as I'm getting, closer to 40 than to 30, I feel like now is my time to start maybe transitioning into doing some of that stuff that I'm also really passionate about. And so I thought, what can I do that would be a really fun thing that I'm passionate about? And I've loved wine. Living in the Bay Area, when I moved to San Francisco in 2014 to be with my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, um, I was right next to the Napa Valley, the biggest wine region in the United States.
The Mecca.
California is the biggest wine producer. It's one of the biggest wine producers in the world, actually. And so I spent a lot of time going to Napa and learning about the winemaking process and learning about the grape cultivating process, and really just sparked something in me about wine. And I was like, I would love to make wine approachable, because so much of the wine industry just feels really up its own ass in a way. And they make it seem like it's so exclusive, like, "Oh, you don't know enough about wine, you can't talk about wine." And so many people love drinking wine, but don't know how to order wine, don't know what to look for on a label, and don't know how to talk about what they want when they want to drink wine, and I was like, I want to make wine approachable for millennials and people who are my age and younger, because I think that there's such an amazing market for wine knowledge and like a thirst, like not to like use a pun, but like pun intended, like a thirst for knowledge about drinking wine. And so I wanted to make that show. And so that's kind of where the idea for What's Good Wine was born, is like this idea that I want to make drinking wine fun again and learning about wine like fun and approachable, and not needing to have, like an extensive like sommelier like level of knowledge in order to have fun and enjoy learning about wine.
I don't know if you are familiar with Wine Library TV, Gary Vaynerchuk's old wine podcast, but that exactly sounds like the kind of thing that we were describing with What's Good Wine, and it kind of brings down the entry level for people who want to be able to talk about their experiences with like wine drinking and tasting and all of that.
Yeah, there's a ton of wine content out there. Like if you search YouTube or if you search podcast platforms, you can definitely find it. And I've been doing some research into how I want to brand and, really develop the show from the content producer and creative development person inside of me from all of the years I worked in digital media. It's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. I don't want to just like start a random TikTok and hope for the best, even though that's worked for a lot of people. And so I was like, well, what can I do? And I think what's tough about it is like so much of that really good wine content is impossible to find unless you like have heard of it from somebody, or somebody that listens to something. And so much of the stuff you find on YouTube is just like two besties that are getting drunk on camera, and it's just a shit show, and you're like, I'm trying to like learn something about the wine, and instead it's like two girls who like picked a random bottle off of a shelf at Costco and are like, let's just talk about this one wine today. And I really want to make something more structured and something that's easier to follow. And of course, something that people can find. And I think if we take the formula that we used for What's Good Games and how we built that brand, and I can apply it to What's Good Wine, we could really have something magical.
Yeah, it's almost like that's the case for almost every industry, is that when you're trying to find something like informative, you just find some random person that has no idea what they're talking about, or they're not really focusing on what's important about it. I don't know.
Well,
Like,
the rise of digital content creation has really emboldened enthusiasts to make content that's a little helter-skelter. And I think it's awesome that there's so many people who are passionate about making content, and that the way that digital production has allowed it to be more accessible. So you get people who have raw talent, but maybe would have been a little gate kept out of it before because of not only the cost of the equipment, but the access to production houses and to distribution. Right? Distribution was really like the toughest part for people when TV was in a more traditional model. But now that we're in a digital age, anybody can make a show. We can get a bunch of people together on a Discord and have a good time and talk about whatever. And then you can upload it to the internet and bam, your show is out there. But what that means is that there really is like a wide gamut of the type of content that you're getting. Like sometimes you'll get really kind of loosey-goosey content that's just a bunch of people hanging out, having a good time. And you get some really fun community moments that feel really casual and really authentic and organic. But you can also get stuff that's a little bit messy-bessy and it's hard to listen to, right? You get people that are like, I just really love Metal Gear Solid, so I'm going to make a Metal Gear Solid podcast and I'm going to upload it to the internet. But I don't care if it has content problems or audio problems, or if I don't know how to edit it and there's large gaps and there's like issues with it, right? And so it's tough sometimes to find good produced, edited
yeah,
content for the thing that you want. Because I bet there's a good Metal Gear Solid podcast out there, but how the heck are you going to find it, right?
yeah.
I don't know
What's
why
that?
I chose MGS as like the thing that
Yeah,
was
you
my
really
example,
targeted
but
like 5 people right there. You really went after like 5 very specific
I
people.
think it's because
Uh,
I saw that Kojima was tweeting. Did you guys see that Kojima was tweeting?
Yeah, it's like
Kojima,
the
yeah.
It's like,
20th
and everyone's got like the eyeballs on it. Like, what's is Kojima tweeting
It's
about?
the
Metal Gear
20th
Solid?
anniversary of Metal Gear
What's
Solid
happening?
2.
Ooh,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Yeah.
just because you were pretty good.
I see what you did there.
That's the one time he speaks into the mic, by the way. That's the one time he'll ever speak into the mic.
Yep.
So, but I have another question because we're talking about wine. I'm new to adult beverages. I'm still new to drinking. I just turned 21 in March, and it's not the
Welcome.
best time to go out to bars. So,
No, yeah,
it's getting
right. Oh, that's a bummer for you.
better-ish. Literally, world shut down March 15th. My birthday was March 23rd, and so it was just like couldn't go anywhere. But do you have any like quick tips for somebody that's trying to
For getting drunk in public?
for starting to drink wine?
Is that what you're
Drink
asking
wine.
for?
Drink wine.
Use a
Wine
paper bag.
How do I navigate wine specifically? This is like because
Oh.
I've never touched it. I don't know anything about it. But I
Well,
want to try different
when
beverages.
you drink, if you were hypothetically, if you were allowed to go to a bar and order a drink, and you would enthusiastically throw your ID at the bartender and be like, "Yes, look at me, I made it." What would you order?
Well, the drinks I have had are like margaritas and palomas.
Oh,
So that's what
palomas,
yeah.
interesting. Are you like a classic margarita, or are you more like a strawberry mango margarita kind of person?
I mix it up. Like sometimes I get the strawberry, sometimes I just get like the classic.
Classic lime.
Depends.
Because most people, when they start drinking alcohol for the first time, start with like the really sweet, sugary stuff because you have to kind of dumb down the hard, harsh flavor of the spirit in order to make it more palatable, right? I kind of liken it to drinking coffee for the first time, and how a lot of us, when we start drinking coffee for the first time, put a lot of cream or sugar or flavors, whipped cream, all the accoutrement in it, right? To kind of dumb the bitterness down. And then the longer you drink coffee, usually the less and less stuff you put in it until you eventually just start drinking your coffee black because you're like, I live for the bitter flavor of the coffee, right? But that takes time. What, am I the only one that drinks black coffee? Come on.
I don't drink coffee.
day.
Sorry.
I don't drink coffee.
Okay, well,
Like
I know there's
it.
people listening or watching that are like, you see me. I feel you. I live for the
You are
black coffee.
definitely
Those
being
5
seen.
people.
100%.
Okay. So I think it's kind of like that. And so when I was bartending and people would come up to me, because inevitably there's always somebody on every shift that's like, I want you to pick what I'm gonna drink. And I'm like, this is a trap because everybody wants to drink.
100% a trap.
It's absolutely a trap. Everybody wants to drink something different, and everybody's tastes and flavors are different. So when it comes to wine specifically, if you haven't drank wine before, I almost always recommend going with some of the sweeter wines as a more approachable way in.
Okay.
Particularly if you're going to try to go for red, I wouldn't recommend spending too much time drinking a lot of red wine first, unless you're going with more of a really jammy, fruity red wine, because that'll help kind of ease you into it, because red wine in particular can get really dry. It can have a lot of tannins. It can kind of make your mouth pucker a little bit. And if you're not used to those kind of flavors and experiences,
Yeah.
then it could turn you off of wine. So I recommend whites and rosés to start, particularly sweeter wines. So Rieslings are a really great starter wine. Moscato is a good starter wine. Pinot Grigio actually is like a really awesome all-around wine that you can get that's a little bit on the drier side, but also is much more approachable and kind of gets a lot more fruit flavors in it without being like overly sugary sweet.
Mhm.
And it's a wine that you can find on virtually every wine menu in any restaurant across the world. Pinot Grigio is just a really ubiquitous wine. And I think that's a good starter. Or you could also start with sangrias. Sangrias are a great place to start too. It's like put a little fruit in there, put a little brandy in there, like make it sweet. And you give yourself a little bit of a entry level. Rosés have really risen in popularity over the last like 2 to 3 years. They've really exploded on the market in a way that I love because I'm a big rosé fan. In fact, one of my 2 What's Good Wine videos is 5 rosés you can get at Target right now, which I think is still accurate. Most of those rosés are still available. And I think, when you're trying to start with wine, don't spend too much money, figure out what you like. A
Mm.
lot of specialty wine shops, like if you have a Total Wine or a Bevmo or whatever your local wine place is, or alcohol sales place that sells like spirits, beer, and all that.
Mm.
They'll sell individual cans now, which is pretty cool. So you
Yeah.
can spend a little bit less. You don't have to buy a whole bottle. So if you open a bottle and you're like, I fucking hate this, what am I going to do with this now? You can just buy individual cans. And that's kind of a good way to try out some wines too without having to invest in a whole bottle of wine.
Good to know. I like how
That's awesome.
your take on that is very different from what. Sorry, just.
No, you're fine.
I was gonna say, like, the going to the coffee thing. I've heard two takes. It's like either ease into the black coffee or just dive straight into the black coffee.
Dude, I mean, it's going straight to black coffee is really brutal. That's why, like, I would never recommend you start drinking like a super Tuscan. Like that's for after having years of drinking wine, would you maybe go to something like that? Unless you just really like those bitter flavors. If those are something that you just naturally gravitate towards,
Mhm.
then maybe you should just go for it. But I will say that those types of wines that are a little bit more robust and more complex in flavor also tend to be more expensive. So it's just really about how much money you want to spend because I mean, these days it feels like you can't go to a restaurant. And maybe it's just the fact that I live in California and everything is wildly overpriced here. I can't order a glass of wine in a restaurant now for like less than $10. And you can get a beer at most places for like 4 or $5. So it's like, well, do I want a nice glass of wine? A nice glass of wine at restaurants now is usually like $15. So if you're going to have like 3 drinks, you're dropping like $50 with tax and tip, if not more. 50, $60 for 3 drinks. That's a lot. So wine is not cheap. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of ways to drink wine cheaper at home than in restaurants. So if you're out with your friends or whatever, maybe save the wine for drinking at home. And unless you're like a big baller and you're like, let's go. Peeling off the bills.
Maybe one day.
Hell yeah. I
Do you
mean,
do
while we're
box
on
wine,
the
Andrea? Do you do box wine?
Do I do box wine?
Yeah.
I've been trying. I was planning. It's one of my planned videos for What's Good Wine is to do a box wine review because the box wine industry, to use like a very cliche tech term, is being disrupted, and that's because of the sustainability movement that's happening in the wine industry as well.
Mm.
Because box wine is a lot more sustainable from a packaging perspective, and you can actually seal and keep wine fresher longer in some of the box packaging than you can in traditional glass and cork. Because cork is like a 300 or 400-year-old technology, right? Cork has been around for a long time and it works, but that's why you're also seeing a lot of bottles go to twist off caps. And I remember when I first started bartending back in the mid like 2000s, it was a very like faux pas to have wine with a twist off. It's like, oh, ew, that's cheap. It's got a twist cap. It doesn't have a cork. And it's like, well, actually, a twist cap seals the wine better than cork does. Cork can break and cork can leak. You can get a corked bottle of wine where the cork actually rots and makes the wine bad. And so box wine is really taking that idea of a twist top and taking it one step further. But it's tough because a lot of the high-end winemakers know that they're never going to overcome the reputation of Francia, right? Like everyone thinks box wine and they think Francia. And that wine is, not great. It's kind of trashy. It's going to give you a horrible hangover. And so it's tough because there's some really good wines that are now being packaged in boxes for sustainability, but it's hard to kind of navigate which one of those wines is good or not. But it's on my episode list for future What's Good Wine content.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice. I mean, while we're on the topic of wine, of course, we we're talking before that I'm a super big beer nerd. I know like everything about beer. I'm technically a certified brewer and was working as a brewer for a couple of years as well. And I mean, I basically know nothing about wine. So all of this has been terribly interesting for me because it's something I would like to learn more about. I mean, you touched on rosé being like your favorite style sort of thing. Like, do you have like a go-to bottle of rosé that you love?
Yes. Like a well-known like rosé that it's kind of considered like the definitive rosé to beat in the wine industry is Whispering Angel. It is like the de facto rosé that you see on wine menus. You can find it in pretty much every place that sells wine. And I've never had a bad bottle of Whispering Angel. It's just phenomenal. It's a little bit more expensive than I would prefer, so I don't buy it all the time. It's like usually $25 to $30 a bottle, and I'm like, "Oh, am I feeling fancy on a Tuesday night?" Like, let's go. But in my wine video, my rosé video, I actually talk about The Palm by Whispering Angel, which is a more approachable kind of sister wine made by the same winemaker, and that bottle is usually $15 to $20, depending if you can get it on sale or not. And that's a little bit more approachable, also really delicious. Miraval is another one of my favorites. Miraval was the winery in France that Brangelina invested in. I don't know if you guys are into celebrity alcohols and wines, but so that was their wine. But Miraval is excellent as well. You can get Miraval at Costco now, which is great, but also a little bit on the more expensive. And one of my favorite wines that I love that you can find at gas stations here in the United States is called Yes Way Rosé. And it was this created by this pair of friends, these two girlfriends who wanted to, again, disrupt the wine industry. But it's a Cote de Provence style rosé, which is amazing. And they really kind of, I think, were the ones who invigorated the rosé market outside of France. And that rosé is great. And you can usually get it for 10 to 15 bucks. So those are a couple of my faves.
It's awesome. Yeah, I have a few more questions about wines and things. One's pretty super technical about wine grapes and sugar percentages, so we don't need to dive into that. But I have a question from somebody else. Like, I have a crazy beer glass collection because there's so many different styles of beers, so there's different glasses for all those beers, and this one is actually my favorite glass that I own. Do you have like a particular glass? Like, I know obviously with wine, white wines and red wines are in different glasses as well, but is there like a glass that you like as well, or?
I wish I could say yes. I think my problem is that I've moved so much in my lifetime. I've never really invested in a good set of wine glasses. I keep telling my husband, I was like, this is the year that I'm gonna buy myself some fancy ass glassware that I can like keep, because we like moved into this house just before the pandemic started in the fall of 2019 when we left San Francisco to come down to Los Angeles. And I was like, now I can finally get like a really like boss set of wine glasses. But Riedel is like the de facto brand in wine glasses, but there's so many wine glass makers that make really cool stuff. For a long time I wanted the ones from Crate and Barrel that the girl in Scandal always drinks from, that are really popular, that have the really skinny stem and the really big goblet. But I think the glasses that always look the coolest are Pinot Noir glasses, but I don't always want to drink out of a Pinot Noir glass. So the reason why is because the Pinot Noir glasses have the biggest goblet, much like the sours have the big goblet. It's all about like the bouquet and being able to like kind of smell and really
Yeah.
have that aromatic be part of the experience of what you're drinking. But I don't I don't drink a lot of Pinot Noir. I enjoy Pinot Noirs, but I drink a lot of whites and rosés. And when I'm drinking red, I'm usually drinking Cab, which is a different style of glass as well. But it's a great question. I don't. I'm sad to say I don't. I drink out of my What's Good glasses a lot. So we had what I dubbed as the wine fairy. For a long time, we had this anonymous benefactor who kept sending wine-related items to our What's Good Games box, our postal box. And we got 4 beautifully etched glasses with our What's Good Games logo on them, and we use them all the time. And I'm just mortified that one day one of them is going to break, or I'm going to break one and I'm going to be like tragically sad about it.
Yeah.
But I drink out of them. I drink out of them all the time. So, and they're just like a standard like uh universal wine glass that could have red or white in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, someday, maybe this year's the year for Christmas I can ask for like fancy glasses or something. I don't know.
I believe in you.
Thank you.
Yeah, some of my glasses have traveled cross countries and all throughout Germany and England, so
Aren't you like deathly afraid you're gonna break them when you travel with them?
every time.
Yeah, they're so fragile. Like good stemware is something you really have to be careful with because it's so easy to break stemware. And honestly, I've had a lot of friends break my stemware, which is why I
Yeah.
probably haven't invested, because whenever I have friends over to drink, somebody breaks something. And then if I invested like in good stemware is expensive too. Like a good stemware will be like anywhere from $30 to $50 per glass. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's expensive. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna buy like an 8 glass set of something, I never am gonna bring it out. It's gonna be like the crystal, that your grandmother brought out for like that one meal a year, and then it goes back in the cupboard for the rest. Did anybody else have that, like with their
Yeah.
china or whatever?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We called it the Thanksgiving plates,
Yeah.
That's like the good
But I,
china.
but I don't want that either, right? I don't want to invest a ton of money in something I use one time a year.
Yeah, I
But it-
stopped being so precious with some of my beer glasses. I was like, they're just sitting in the cupboard. I may as well just use them.
Exactly.
Did anybody else have that family member that had furniture that was like covered in plastic?
I actually didn't.
It was like one, because I live on the border. It was like one person in Mexico that I knew. It was just like all of her furniture was covered in plastic, and I was like, okay, that's weird.
That's
But
wild.
I appreciate the alcohol talk so much because I'm not 21 yet. I turn 21 next February, so I'm not completely blind anymore, which is very nice. So thank you.
Wait, are you okay? Like, listen, the popo's not on this call. You telling me you haven't had a drink?
I honestly haven't.
Good for you. Honestly, good for you.
I started college in 2019, and then I was only on campus for a semester and a half before COVID hit. So then I was just home.
No,
and,
you
and
missed the good underage years.
I know, and my family
I-
doesn't drink, so it was just out the window. So yeah,
Yeah.
So yeah,
I didn't
Good.
drink either until a few weeks after my 21st. So.
And to be
I'm
clear, I'm
coming
not
over
trying
to
to
the
push
States.
a culture of alcoholism at all. I absolutely understand that there's, a whole market for non-alcoholic stuff. To be clear, my husband does not drink, has not had a drink, does not consume at all ever. And I think when people find that out, they're like, wait, really? And I was like, yeah, no. They're like, but how do you guys work if he doesn't drink and you love alcohol so much? And I was like, well, because it's about responsibility, and I worked in alcohol sales for a really long time. So that's why I have such an affinity for it. But I started drinking when I was 14 back in North Dakota because, in case you didn't know, North Dakota is one of the top 3 binge drinking states in the country because it's depressing there. But I think that there's a way to do it responsibly, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with waiting until you're ready. And if waiting until you're ready means, hey, I'm never ready, that's cool too. What I love about what happened during the pandemic is that a lot of people decided, you know what? It's safer for me to just not drink. And there was a boom in mocktails and creation of non-alcoholic drinks and the sales of non-alcoholic beer. I mean, look at what happened with the major beer makers. Budweiser, Coors, Heineken all have a 0% alcohol beer available for sale in almost every liquor market in the United States today. That did not happen before the pandemic. So I think it's awesome that there's a lot of people paying attention to the fact that people want to maybe eliminate those kinds of depressants from their life and go, I still want the flavor and the taste of something different than like water or soda. What can I have? And the industry has really responded in a way. And there's a lot of non-alcoholic spirits as well. Seedlip is a big one that I tried and was experimenting with when I was pregnant. And so I think that there's a whole conversation to be had about that as well. So in case somebody's listening going, I don't really like how it feels like they're pushing alcohol. No. Don't get it twisted.
The
I'm all
agenda.
for the giant non-alcoholic market that's happening as well.
That's really cool. I really hope that What's Good Wine comes sooner than later because I don't have a lot of knowledge in alcohol or different types of alcohol. I've consumed alcohol over the years, but I've never really had like a backlog of knowledge for said alcohol. And so just listening to you now, as with most of the things you do, as far as the knowledge that you have and the expertise that you have, just really easy to listen to, really easy to consume. So that's something that I'm absolutely looking forward to now. I can't wait.
Thanks.
I just brought it up because it's one of the things that you love the most in the world, such as video games. And
It's
your
true.
recently born daughter, Charlie, how's she doing?
Yeah, she's great. I mean, she's a baby, so she's a lot of work, but she's fun. And, it's been really a blessing that I had a pandemic baby because it allowed me to kind of hide my pregnancy for as long as I wanted to. If we hadn't been in the pandemic, going to shows and conventions and traveling would have been really difficult, and I would have had to probably stop traveling at some point, and people would have had questions. And then, going out to dinners and things like that, not drinking because obviously alcohol is a part of my online persona. It would have been really obvious to everybody right away. And during the pandemic, being on camera at home, it was easy for me to hide because I could just put whatever I wanted in a wine glass and make it look like it was wine or a cocktail, and nobody was the wiser. And so I was able to hide it for a while. It was funny when Brittany and I kind of had the conversation where we found out we were pregnant at the same time. I was like, "So, are you gonna like fake drinking Maker's Mark in a glass? Or are you gonna put like apple juice in there or something?" She's like, "No, I'll probably just drink water or use a coffee cup." I was like, "Woman, you never drink whiskey out of a coffee cup. That's never gonna fly. People are gonna see through that right away." So if people were clued in on it, nobody said anything. And we were checking, our communities and to see if the people were like, "Oh, did you see what they were drinking the other day?" And either people weren't paying attention or they never like voiced their like suspicions, which was great. And then it has allowed my husband to be home, and I'm really grateful for that as well, that he gets to spend time with the baby. He got a really healthy amount of paternity leave. Thanks, Disney. And now that he's working from home still, like when he has breaks on calls, he can like come in and like say hi to her for a few minutes between, his responsibilities with his job, which is nice because if he was in the office, he wouldn't get to do that. It'd just be us at home all day, and then he'd have to wait until he got home from the office. And so that's been a real boon to, I think, parents everywhere
Mhm.
who have kids that, you know, aren't aren't having to manage their education. I know the pandemic has also been like a giant stressor for parents who have had to manage their kids' stay-at-home education, which is like another thing on their plate, but we've been really grateful.
Yeah. Isn't it kind of surreal that you, Britt, and Jen were all pregnant like at the same time? Like you guys all
Yes.
know each other
Yes,
so
it was.
well, and like how many people like it almost feels like there's a new baby boom right now because of the pandemic. Like there's so many
There
people having babies right now.
absolutely is. And it's funny because I read this story at the beginning of the year, the beginning of 2021, where this reporter was like, "Are you expecting a second baby boom from the pandemic? Well, don't. Births are down." And I was like, "Wait, how is that possible?" I was like, "I know so many people that are pregnant right now." And it's because they only looked at the birth data from babies born if people got pregnant in the first month of the pandemic. So if couples got pregnant during March 2020 only and then gave birth by whatever, like January or February of 2021. And I was like, dude, the pandemic had just started. And
Yeah,
we've been in
people
the pandemic now for
underestimate.
like 18 months. There's absolutely a birth boom happening. I don't know if it's as big as people anticipated it being, but I know no less than a dozen couples that have had a baby,
Mhm.
and a lot of them work in games. And so we're making jokes about how we're going to have to get like an E3 nanny suite for next year that everybody brings their babies to.
So I just
Uh,
wanted to get some questions from around everybody else. McKenna, I know you usually have a post-it note or a napkin.
Yes, I have my next few
Oh, nice. Very
questions.
nice.
A lot of them have been answered, of course, because I just write anything and everything that comes to my head. But sticking with like the parenting thing, what has been something unexpected about becoming a new parent that like maybe not aren't in like the parenting books or anything?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It's tough because there's a lot of parenting books out there. There's
Yeah.
no shortage of people with advice on how to raise babies
how to
on the
raise your baby?
internet. That is for sure. I think the thing that new parents just have to figure out on their own is what you can do to soothe your individual baby. There's so many different schools of thought and advice on how to raise kids and how to do feedings, how to do sleep training, how to do diapering even, and you just kind of got to learn your individual child's needs and just respond to them in kind. And really just give yourself grace as a new mom in particular. Obviously, new dads go through their own sets of stress, but being the person that carried the baby and having to deal with everything that comes along with being postpartum is something that not a lot of people talk about. Like you hear the stress of overnights and being awake and baby screaming and all that, but like moms are under like an immense amount of pressure to, not only take care of their child, but like you have to take care of yourself because medically you're going through so much. And I won't like get you into the gory details, but it's a lot. And I think that, me managing my own health on top of my baby's health was something that I wasn't probably mentally prepared for. And then, throw my like catastrophic surgery recovery into the mix. And that was like a whole nother bag of
Mhm.
stuff to deal with that, we won't go down. But I think, self-care is important. Self-care is more important than you can ever imagine it is. And it's okay to take the time to take care of yourself.
Oh, wow.
Just a quick fact about pregnancy. Like, I work with eyes, and one of the things that I never anticipated working in that industry was the idea that while someone was pregnant,
Yes, cat.
their their hormones could fluctuate so much that their physical prescription could change. And
Yes.
that's insane. So if you want to talk, yeah, like that's a very minor thing to go into, but that one piece of information shows you how much stress the body's under and how much things change when those hormones are going. So
You don't
yeah,
get new
absolutely crazy.
eyeglasses. That's what they
Nope.
say. Don't go get new eyeglasses while you're pregnant. Wait till you're postpartum.
Yep.
And I definitely like my prescription is technically expired. And so I was like, nope, gotta wait. Now it's like, no, I think it's probably a good enough time for me to go. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Like the hair loss was something that I had heard about but wasn't fully prepared for. And it doesn't happen to everybody, right? And that's the thing is that there's no universal thing that happens to every single mother out there, and the severity of the symptoms that you get both during pregnancy and postpartum vary quite wildly depending on your hormone levels and how your pregnancy goes. And it's tough. Like when they say it's the miracle of life, hot damn, is that the fucking truth? Like the way that pregnancy comes about, it makes it seem like it's so easy and almost anybody can get pregnant, and that is just the farthest from the truth that it could ever be. And managing pregnancy and getting out of pregnancy, I think my joke with all of my pregnant friends and now the postpartum moms is that who are these women that really enjoyed being pregnant, and like what kind of magical pregnancy did you have that it was like a fun experience for you? Because you know what, creating a human life is hard work.
Speaking of which, I just have to ask you, how have you been? Because I know during your pregnancy you struggled a lot with your health as well.
Yeah,
So
it was
how's
it was
everything?
rough. It was way rougher than I thought it was going to be. I had like a really nice like 6 to 8 week period at the beginning of my second trimester before I went to the hospital for the first time that was like, "Oh, this is actually not so bad." Like I can eat some extra calories cuz I need to gain some weight. I still feel motivated to exercise a little bit. I can buy these cute like baby bump clothes, and then it all really went downhill fast. But I'm doing much better, and I finally am getting to a point where I feel like I can reclaim some of who I was physically, at least, before my pregnancy. And I'm excited to get back into my yoga routine, which was a really centering thing for me. I've been doing yoga and practicing yoga for about 7 years now, and just really love it. If you've always wanted to try yoga, I never have. I just can't recommend it enough. There's so many beginner courses out there too. Start with 10 minutes a day. Just do, some down dogs and, ease your way into it. But yoga's been really like life-changing for me. But overall good. I wish I had more like any new parent, I wish I had more energy. Like the sleep exhaustion deprivation is real. And there's a lot of things I want to do content-wise, and I see all these cool video games happening and I'm like, "Oh, Destiny, I miss you. I miss you, Destiny." But I don't have time. I just don't have time. And when I do have time, I don't have the mental energy to do it. I just like sit on the
Yeah.
couch and like stare at the ceiling like you know?
Yeah.
That's it.
It's a good thing you got to see the Spice Girls before all of that, though.
Right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but true story, when we were in London, I was pregnant. I was pregnant with my third pregnancy, and we hid it cuz Steimer and I just drank mocktails wherever we would go, and she was my ride or die during all of my pregnancy problems, and she was like, "Whenever you don't want to drink," she's like, "I will drink mocktails with you all day long." And when we did our What's Good Games meet and greet in the UK in London, we were drinking virgin mojitos the whole time.
I
And
had
there
no
was
clue.
nobody knew. Like, I didn't say anything about that publicly until this last pregnancy. Like, I didn't talk about it ever.
Yeah.
And so we just kept it quiet because like at that point I'd already had 2 pregnancy losses. And
Mhm.
so I knew better than to say anything publicly because I was like, I'd seen friends of mine go through the really hard online interaction of announcing that you're pregnant and then having to announce that you lost your pregnancy. And I didn't want to go through that. And I was like, I'm just going to keep it to myself. And I actually like miscarried like the next week when we got back from the UK.
Yeah.
And that's when that whole thing with the UK with the E3 2019 happened. And I had that catastrophic surgery, which then led to my other 2 catastrophic surgeries. But it's tough. Like pregnancy is rough, man. Wait, how did we start talking about this? We were talking about something else.
I just asked
We were
about
talking about the
Charlie.
Spice Girls. We were talking about the Spice Girls
Oh,
in the UK. No, this is just my ADHD brain,
Okay.
like being like, what about this thing, this thing, this thing, ping, 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 ping. So the Spice Girls. Oh God, that show was amazing. I'm so glad that Brittany was like, what if we do this really dumb trip? Because she was gonna go by herself. She was gonna go. She and Jason were gonna go alone, and Steimer and I were like, "Woman, you think you're gonna go to the Spice Girls without us? How dare you?" And then I was like scheming. I was like, "What if we make this a business trip? Can we make this a business trip? What if we do a What's Good Games meetup in the UK? Wouldn't that be super fun?" And then we did, and it was awesome. Getting to meet people in the UK was so cool, and I loved that meetup. That was such an amazing time, and I wish I could go back to London like sometime soon, but I have no idea when I'm gonna get back now. So, but
That
it was
was my
great.
I
very
mean,
first
Simon's
experience
now
in
in
a
Berlin.
meetup.
I
Come to
know.
Berlin.
I was just
We
saying
will.
that was my first experience meeting KFBFs in person at any meetup, and I was like, that was definitely the highlight of my trip there. Even though I went to see a music festival, that was amazing.
It was
We
a
should
great
talk
time.
Kevin too. There was a group of us, including maybe someone on this panel, who were shit talking Kevin Coelho. But that's another
Why were you
story.
talking Kevin?
It was a stupid joke we did. Oh God.
Kevin's great. No, obviously everyone shit talks Kevin at Kind of Funny. That's like the running gag, right? Is that they all shit talk Kevin?
Didn't
And
Right,
I was
yeah.
always the one defending Kevin, and then they would be like, "You're only." Nick was always. He's like, "Trust me, once you're here long enough, you'll start to hate Kevin too."
didn't somebody have a question related to this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our good friend Mark Freeman, friend of the show, very, very kind person, writes in with his question, why is Kevin the worst? And then he follows it up with, only kidding, he's a true legend.
He is a true legend. I mean, literally, Kind of Funny would not exist without Kevin Coelho. Like he is the beating heart behind that brand existing, and Kevin's great. But it's funny because he just has a bunch of really bad habits, and I think that when you spend as much time around somebody as you have to when you're creating content, the amount that Kind of Funny does, and they are hardworking people over there. They really bust their ass to put a lot of content out. And they've only increased the amount of work they've done year over year. And that's another thing Tim and I would like lament about. I was like, gosh, you guys are just like crushing it. You're adding all these new people. This is like right after they hired Barrett. And I was like, my God, you guys are just like doing so much. And, I love being part of it all. And he was just like, you earn more money just to hire more people just to make more content, and it just like never stops, and that's how honestly how burnout happens, and it's a really kind of dangerous cycle that you have to find a way to give yourself a release from, because otherwise you just keep growing and grinding, and then you burn out one day and you fizzle and you're done. And hopefully that's not going to happen to those guys and they've been able to give themselves a break. But Kevin, he's just kind of goofy behind the scenes, and he, like I said, like just some bad habits. But I like that I always got to be friends with Kevin because I wasn't there full time. So I would come in like my 2 to 3 days a week and hang out for like 3 to 4 hours and get my Kevin fix, and we were like friends, and then I would leave and then Joe would be like, "This is why you don't hate Kevin, because you don't have to be around Kevin all the time." And I was like, I don't know what I don't know. I think Kevin's a cool guy. And then he and I would always like nerd out over production stuff. So it'd be like me, him, and Nick talking about production stuff. And he was always so great about talking to me about like whatever new gear that they were using, or if there was like new camera lenses or software. And they could always get much cooler, bigger stuff than I would ever justify buying for What's Good, because it's just it was just the four of us. We weren't running, 4 or 5 shows a day. So they needed to absolutely invest in, top quality stuff. And I would always like salivate over like the new thing Kevin would get shipped to the office. And I'd be like, ooh, what's the new toy that you got, Kevin? Can I look at it? So Kevin's great, Mark.
I'm not gonna
don't hate on
lie.
Kevin.
Out of all of the people that we've tried to get on this show, Kevin has been the hardest because he is so busy and he's always working so
yeah.
hard.
He has
It's
no time.
insane.
Yeah.
Shout out to Kevin.
He does have to take care of his family too. He's got a wonderful wife. Paula is great, and they've got pets. So, he's got to take time for them.
To be
away
fair,
from
he says he's
KF.
busy, but I think it's because he doesn't want to come on the show with Ben after all of the Milk Mommy
Yes.
photoshops. I think he's
Yeah,
just
we got
trying to
confirmation.
avoid-
He loves
Oh,
the video. He loves
yeah.
the Photoshop sketch, okay? He sent me that lovely video, thanking me for the Photoshops and to keep going,
He says he loves them. That's what he said.
He loves them. That's official now.
All right, McKenna, you had some other questions?
Oh yeah. I've got one more. Just touching back on like broadcast journalism stuff. Like, what drew you to broadcast journalism and just the industry in general?
Quick note, this is what McKenna's going to school for.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. I really was interested in journalism and writing from a really young age. And I think it really started when I was in middle school and was in my middle school newspaper, The Scroll. That's what it was called. I still have some of the like hard copies that are like legit super old at this point. And we also watched a channel called Channel One here in the United States back when I was in middle school. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a group of like young, hip, early 20 somethings in the era of MTV News that would do news, and we would watch it in the mornings in our homeroom. And Lisa Ling started there at Channel One. And I was just so inspired by wanting to be on camera and wanting to talk about the news that I was like, how do I make this a career? So I knew that I wanted to work in journalism and on camera reporting from a really young age, from like when I was like 11 years old and on. And so I worked in my middle school newspaper, and then I became the editor in chief of my high school newspaper, worked at the newspaper all through middle school and high school. And then I started looking for journalism programs, but I didn't have the resources to go to the more prestigious journalism schools here in the States. Like Columbia is like one of the better schools, and there's Poynter in Florida. And, I was looking at the media program at UCLA, and I just couldn't afford it. And so I went to the school that I got a scholarship for, and I loved it. So, and it was one of the top 10 schools at the time, the University of Minnesota's journalism program. But it was interesting because when I was in school for journalism, I started in investigative. And then the more I started talking to actual investigative reporters and learning about how to source material, how to, go about, ethically working with different sources of information and really like the foundation for journalism, I decided, I was like, gosh, this is like really intense and really hard. And it feels like I'm going to be working on a lot of stories that are important, but also like really serious. And that was not kind of the way I saw my career and my life going. So I pivoted in journalism school from an investigative writing track to a broadcast media track. And I decided to go for entertainment news because I was like, I want to be on camera and I want to work in reporting, but I want to do something that brings joy to people's lives and that is joyous for me to work on and something that I find interesting and fun and is an escape for people. And that's how I ended up in entertainment news in particular, away from my original like investigative journalism track. Which kind of part of journalism are you interested in?
More so like production, like behind the scenes type of deal. Like I transferred. So I was originally going for journalism, like electronic media, like all encompassing journalism. And then I transferred and now I'm like focusing more on production, and technically it's media studies and production, but there's still like a bit of writing and everything. So, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, the writing never goes away. Even if you're
yeah, no.
fully into digital, like I am now, you still have to know how to write.
Mhm.
And I think it's important, like knowing how to do a paper edit, I think is a lost skill that everybody who works on camera and does interviewing should have. Do you do paper edits?
Um,
Have you done a
not-
paper edit ever?
oh
Do you
gosh,
know what I mean when I say a
No
paper
clue.
edit?
I'm so sorry. No.
No, you don't have to be sorry. It might not be a thing they teach anymore, right? And so a paper edit, and you can do it not physically on paper anymore. You can like type it, right? Like we're not like you're not writing out notes in a notebook like I did when I was in college because I'm old. You like probably have a laptop or an iPad, right? When you're writing your notes.
Or a napkin.
So a paper edit is essentially taking your interviews and instead of cutting it first, you transcribe the interview and then you edit your piece together using your transcription first and then you go back and you address your A roll and then you do your A roll first, right? Your interview is the A roll and then your VO, your voiceover is part of the A roll and then your B roll, which is the footage that covers the A roll. You go in and do the last. And like the style of editing is very different now and the way they teach editing is like completely different. I mean, I learned doing tape to tape for crying out loud. So it was a while ago. It's very different. Like the way that production is moving and how quickly the tools change, even looking at something as comprehensive as Adobe and how they've changed Creative Cloud from when I started using Premiere. Because I started on Final Cut. Like that was my first. And like Final Cut is still like the de facto for a lot of filmmaking. But like digital, nobody uses Final Cut. Like I think Brittany still uses Sony Vega. I think she uses like some really old. I finally got her over onto Premiere. I'm like, listen, we need to keep this universal. You need to get onto Premiere. So she uses Premiere now. But anywho, I got off on a tangent there.
To answer your paper edit question, yes, I have done those then. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes. Transcribing is a lost art. People don't do it anymore. And it's important. It's important to transcribe your interviews, kids.
Yes.
Now, Ben and Carl, I know you guys have already asked your questions in the future, so that's why you've been so quiet this entire time. But for us that are still here in the past, Ben, do you have any questions for Andrea today?
I might just go straight to my community. I have lots of questions, but I might go straight to the community questions just for time. So I've got this amazing question here from Lucy Reed. Press X to Lucy. Shout out to Lucy. And if you're listening to this, her episode's probably live right now on Simply Sassy Vids from last week. So go and check that out. Lucy writes, "Hey Andrea, I find your presenting and hosting skills very inspirational. Do you have any advice for talking clearly and confidently on camera and combating the nerves? I have a habit of talking way too fast. Thanks and keep up the great work." From Lucy.
That's a great question, Lucy. And that's something that I struggled with in the beginning of my on-camera career as well. I did extensive on-camera training when I came out of broadcast school because I did some on-camera training while I was in journalism school, but it was not nearly enough to be competitive with the market that I threw myself into here in Los Angeles and the people I was going up against in auditions. So I did about 2 to 3 years of on-camera training once I got here. And if you don't have access to a professional host trainer or classes, I would recommend looking for improv classes. Almost every major city, even smaller cities now, have improv classes, and there's a lot of online resources as well. I think that will help you get a little bit more comfortable being extemporaneous on camera and not maybe struggling to find the right thing to say and being a little bit more confident. So, one of the exercises that I did when I was doing on camera training early in my career was taking a story and making it just into bullet points because you need to be able to succinctly talk about something without relying on a script or a full teleprompter. So I would take a news story, whatever you're interested in. If you're into video games and you're listening to the show, maybe just go to like IGN.com and pick whatever the first story is in the news channel and then make it into like 4 to 5 bullet points and then try to tell the story back only using your bullet points. So if like the story is there's a massive Twitch leak, go through the story, pick out 5 major points of the story, write it in a bullet point, and then make the story go away and then just turn on your camera or the selfie mode on your cell phone and try to tell the story back just using your bullet points. And it's a really good exercise to try to get yourself more comfortable talking on camera while also being able to improvise because it's a skill that you absolutely need, whether you're using a teleprompter or you're just podcasting. And I found that to be a really helpful thing that I did in my on-camera training. And really, if you can take stuff like that, it'll help you just practice. So maybe make that a daily exercise. Set aside 30 minutes of your day to say, I'm going to pick a story from whatever site you go to, whether you're like a rock, paper, shotgun fan, or maybe, you're more of a GameSpot fan, or you like Eurogame, or whatever your site is that you go to for news. Pick a random story that's interesting to you, bullet point it, then just practice it back into camera.
That's a fantastic answer. That's great. And I know, Caesar, I saw you listening very intently there. I know that'll be really helpful for you as well. So, no, that's great. Thank you so much.
I was
No
listening.
problem.
What's that supposed to mean?
I was just saying you're listening. You're
Oh,
really
yeah.
focused, and it's like it could be very applicable to something like patch notes. It's great.
Yeah, sure.
The other community
Never
question.
like, just to interject here, like, never be too proud to keep learning and to keep going back to training. Like, I spent years doing training, like, after studying stage. I did stage acting for a really long time before I
Mhm.
decided acting wasn't where my passion was, that on camera presenting was where my passion was. And you can't ever be too proud to keep going back and learning and keep going back and making your skills better and honing and practicing. I mean, I've done teleprompter and writing for literally thousands of videos, and I still find things that I need to sharpen in my tool shed. And that's after working professionally for over a decade in this industry. And I think, particularly if you don't go to school and you don't have professional training, if you just decided, this is what I want to do for my career, and you started streaming or you started on YouTube and you don't have professional training, it's even more important to take those moments to say, what can I do to better myself today, to put myself over the edge of the person I'm going head to head for a position or a job? And if you look and go, I don't need that, I'm good, then you've already failed, in my opinion, quite honestly. So you can never practice too much, is what I'm trying to say.
It could be as simple as speaking into the diaphragm of your microphone.
Exactly,
You know
PJ.
what, PJ? You're right about that.
For anybody that's
Getting
not
really
aware,
good
because
tips.
we were recording or we were talking before we started recording. We're gonna call Phil PJ now. It's just
It's official. That's his new name. Now I do have one more community question as well from Reese Boy at _Reese Boy, who asks, "What would your 3 desert island games be?" What would your desert island games be, Andrea?
So if I was stranded on an
Yeah.
island, what would the 3 games I would want to take with me be?
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've answered this question on one of our PAX panels, I think, but I didn't get 3. How luxurious! 3 games.
Oh,
My
So
one
generous.
game that I
Option.
chose was Tetris, because I was like, this is a game that you can literally play ad nauseum forever, and it just keeps going and going and going,
Endless.
and it never gets old. It's classic. It's such a well designed game. So I will still stick with Tetris as one of my 3 games. I think another game I could probably play ad nauseum, because I have played it ad nauseum, is Destiny 2. Played hundreds and hundreds of hours of that game. Love it. I think being on a desert island, though, that game wouldn't work, because that would mean I would have access to the internet, and then I would be
Yeah.
able to ask people like, please come and help me. But if I was going to pick like an offline game to play, that I've played a lot of, probably Animal Crossing. I've played a lot of Animal Crossing. I think it's very soothing. And you can always like destroy your island and like start over and just like keep building. And if I was stuck on an island, maybe I would get inspiration to like fix my real island I
You
was
play
stuck
real
on
life
by,
Animal Crossing,
by playing on my fake island. But maybe I don't have all the recipes on my real island to make the island that I want of my dreams. Oh, don't get me started on my Animal Crossing woes.
Well, see, at least on your
Um,
real island, you would be able to stack some of your materials.
Oh,
And
true. Touche,
yeah,
touche.
yeah. So
Third game would probably be Rock Band 2. The soundtrack for that game is amazing. It's one of my all-time favorite games. I just love that game. It was the game that led me to my husband. And my passion and love for music and rhythm games goes way back in my gaming career, and I think that would be a fun game to have like the plastic instrument set up, and I need an escape. I'm just gonna go, bang out some Paint It Black
Oh
and
yeah.
have fun. Yeah.
Nice.
It's got a good chart.
Nice.
And Carl, did you have any questions?
Yeah, so the community question that I had from Hoodie at Penny Marbles has already been asked. It was just asking how you are, Andrea. But I just wanted to say I've been a patron since 2017.
Yes,
for What's Good
thank you so much
Games.
for the support.
Just absolutely love what you've been doing and the fact the community's been so awesome and that sort of thing. And I'm really sorry you've had to send postcards down to this, down to the Shire. So,
You
but
don't have to be sorry about that at all. It was honestly like it was hard when Steimer said that she was leaving, and we had to look at how do we scale back some of the Patreon responsibilities, knowing that it was just going to have to be me and Brett. We've loved doing the postcards as much time it takes to write them out. I I pride myself that I put a little bit more effort into my postcards than Brittany and Steimer did.
Whoa.
I picked a new joke every month, everybody, okay?
There was no repeats.
I think we just learned why Steimer left. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yes. She was like, these fucking postcards. You make me do these dumb postcards. No, we love that. Sorry, you probably had a question there. We were talking about Patreon. Sorry to
Oh
interrupt.
no, it was just just off the top of my head. Is there anything sort of, because you've achieved so much in gaming, is there anything aspirational that you'd love to be able to do?
Oh, that's a good question. I think when it comes to video games, I think being in a game would be fun. I'm not a voice actor by trade, and I never have pretended to be, nor do I want to make any indications that like I have a desire to go into voice acting as a career. But I think having like a cameo in a game would be really fun. Not too dissimilar to how Jessica Chobot had a cameo in Mass Effect 3. I was hella jealous when she announced that she was in the game. I was like, oh God, I'm so jealous right now, but I'm so happy for her because she's great. But that's what I would really love. I would love to have a cameo in a video game at some point. But again, I don't have desires to become an actor. I enjoyed my time working on stage. Like being a live stage actor is very different than doing VO or very different than doing TV or film. But it would be a fun little cool thing to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you.
And Gage, I think you're the last one we haven't heard anything from. So, did you have any questions you wanted to ask? Or
I do have one. It's really, really kind of rapid fire question. Just need a yes or no. You don't have to get too deep into it.
Okay.
Have you ever played Dragon's Dogma?
No, I haven't. My friend Wout is like it stumps for Dragon's Dogma all the time. And back when I was working at Machinima, everybody was talking about it. It was like the cult of personality RPG that like I just never got around to. But my era of RPG playing didn't start until semi recently. I would say probably Skyrim was the first RPG that I spent a lot of time in. And by a lot of time, it was only a couple hundred hours. And I thought that was a ton of time to spend in an RPG. And then, the internet fanboys were like, oh yeah, bitch, I've put 2,000 hours into Skyrim. And I was like, well, good for you then. But no, I've heard nothing but good things.
It's one of his favorite games, so that's why he's bringing
like
it.
very eagerly being like, let's talk about Dragon's Dogma.
By the way, he's holding himself back.
No, he just wants to know if you're going to go back to Skyrim now that they're adding fishing.
No. My time with Skyrim is done.
It's just you and me, Gage.
Animal Crossing, though. Animal Crossing.
Yeah, there's so many RPGs that I need to spend time with that I haven't. Like, if I was going to go into ESO, I there's so much they've done with ESO Online, Like, I would love to see what they've done. I say ESO Online, like people say PIN number. Sorry about that, everybody. But, like, I would like to try that. I've had whispers of, like, Final Fantasy 14. Do I dip my toes in there? What's going on over there? Fallout, I would like to go back and spend more time in Fallout. There's just too many RPGs to play, and I'm waiting for other stuff. I know, right? Like they've made that game so cool, and I would love to go back.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so different from launch.
There's just not enough time in the day, man.
Do we have time to rapid fire the rest of the community questions at you?
Yeah,
or do you
of course. Yeah, of course.
Okay. So go ahead and hit your community question real quick, Gage, and then we'll go down the line.
No, we already covered it. It was Mark's question from earlier.
Oh, okay, that's right. You asked it earlier. Dynamically. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
I thought Gage was gonna be like, no, it was a Dragon's Dogma question. That's what it was.
And then Caesar, did you have any more?
Yeah, I got some. I got a couple. This is from Matt Phillips from @MattP Video. It's a really long username. I'm just kidding. What's the best use of wine in a video game? Resi 8 is the only example I can think of. Would love to hear from a sommelier on the matter.
Oh, please, I cannot even attempt to call myself a sommelier. Though I had contemplated trying to go for my sommelier certification. And I still may. Who knows? Best use of wine in a video game. That's a good one. A good recent one. I really want them to make that cup a real thing. Like I would buy that. I would spend good
Yeah.
money on that cup. That was a nice cup. But there's a wine game called 100 Days, I believe. It's like a winemaking game that a ton of people sent to me, and they gave me a code, which was really kind of them. And it was like during the end of my pregnancy when that game came out, and I was like in a bad way from my surgery, so I wasn't able to play that game yet. But it's on my to-do list to go back and play the winemaking game. But I don't know. Let's go with Resi 8. That's a good one. Put me on
Uh,
the spot and I don't have a good answer for you.
the correct answer was
Sorry.
Stardew Valley, obviously.
I never played
uh,
Stardew Valley.
How dare? There's another RPG to play.
Too many RPGs! Trust me, Joey Noel stumped for that game a long time.
And then friend of the show, Gina Viteri, Final Fantasy 14 fanboy, said, I sent her a gif of BTS and was wondering if she liked BTS.
Oh, the GIF. BTS I like some of their songs. Yeah, I don't have like a salivating fervor over BTS that a lot of the world seems to have, but I think that they're a talented group of folks that are, got some smooth dance moves and good harmonies. Boy bands. Who doesn't like a good boy band?
I'm sorry, Gino.
Poor Gino.
He'd be so devastated
What
for
about
me.
Final Fantasy 14? Do you like Final Fantasy 14? Another
Hasn't played
another
it.
RPG?
Never tried it actually. That's the thing. That's why I haven't, because I'm worried that if I get into it, I'm really gonna like it, and then, all of my responsibilities are out the window.
That's just one of Gino's other favorite things, so had to throw it out there. Just
Yeah.
crush
Yeah.
all of his dreams in one go.
I want to tell him.
Sorry.
Al, did you you had a community question, correct?
Who?
Oh, you're muted.
You're unmuted.
You're muted. You're muted.
Do you guys have like a jar that you like put something in every time somebody's muted?
No, that'd be great though. That's a good idea.
would be
I'm doing it
great.
now. Oh, he's like fully out of audio right now.
Are we not going to razz him though about his cable management that's just on display?
McKenna, did you
boldly-
have
just boldly on display?
Did you have a
this,
community question?
handful rat's nest of cables right next to him. I'm like, come on, dude. Get those
How many
XLs
headphones do you
in
need,
here.
Al?
Alan's figuring
Jesus.
this out?
How many headphones do you need, brother? God.
People just need headphones.
Nope, still can't hear anything.
So while you're
That's
fixing
when you
that out,
disconnect from the call and then come back.
while you're fixing that, we're gonna go to McKenna's community question real quick.
My community question is from Z2R at Z_J_R_. They ask, how have you used your platform to help others? And do you have any memorable stories from across the years?
Oh wow. There's
Yep.
There's
There we go.
there's a lot of like behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, welcome back. And it's what's really great about, I'll just use What's Good because that's like the most recent thing. What's really great about our platform that we have with What's Good Games is that we've had a lot of women in particular reach out to us kind of behind the scenes to talk to us about their aspirations in content creation or their aspirations in working in video games, to say thank you for reminding me that I'm not alone and that it's okay for me to like video games and that there are other women out there that share the passions that I have. I think a lot of women that we've talked to either at in-person events or online have said I was the only girl when I was a kid that played video games in my friend group, and I was alone and didn't think that there were other girls that enjoyed games. I can say certainly that I didn't have any other friends that were girls when I was young that played video games. It was just me and my sister. And it wasn't until I got to college that I met one girl that played games, and the only games she played were The Sims. And there's nothing wrong with only being a Sims player, but it's really tough when you enjoy some games that are a little bit more competitive in particular, that have more of a PvP aspect. Like I do. Like I enjoy PvP games now in particular as an adult. I didn't play them a lot when I was younger because they were super hostile. I mean, they're hostile now, and it's way better than it was back then. And I think having the platform of What's Good Games to remind other women that they are allowed to be a gamer and to be a passionate gamer and to be a passionate content creator if that's what they want to be has been a really like heartwarming experience for me, getting to talk to people about how our show has inspired them to maybe go start their own podcast or to go start their own YouTube channel or their own Twitch stream, and seeing some of our community members start their own thing and then have our community become their community. Like I look at what Doc Brooke has done, for example. So her name is Doc Brooke. Her name is Brooke. And she has been part of the What's Good Games community for a really long time, and she's an educator, and she now has her own stream, and I see people that were in my Twitch chat every day on What's Good Games now go and support her in her Twitch chat, and I think it's awesome that our community that we created can then go uplift another community of another creator who was not doing content creation before and is doing it now, and I think that is something that's really awesome about what we've created, and I just love to see it. I love to see more people being empowered by the work that we do to say, "Hey, I can go do cool work as well," and our community uplift and support them, and I think that that's just aces.
That's
Also, if
awesome.
you guys don't know about her, twitch.tv/docbrooke.
I think
She's
I follow
great.
her.
She does a lot
Yes,
of
he's a
really,
phenomenal streamer.
she's super fun. She does a lot of charity work. She does a lot of really goofy antics on her stream, and she's super chill
Yeah.
and she's awesome. So if you're looking for someone new to follow on Twitch, check her out.
All right, so I'm gonna get my question here out of the way real quick. It's from Gooden Gaiman 611 on Twitter, and he wants to know how you feel about clearly being used as the likeness for Black Widow in the What If Marvel series.
That so many people tweeted to me about that. Um, I think it's great. It felt like there was a period of time early in my career where a lot of women in video games had red hair or had like these online avatars with red hair, and I think it's awesome. I mean, I'm not a natural redhead. Like I have no problem saying that. A lot of people ask me if it's real or not. I'm like, no, it's not real. Look, my hair's brown. Like it's been red though since I was 14. I've been dyeing my hair for a really long time. I went back to brown one time in college, and everyone was like, "What happened?" And I was like, "This is what it." No, they're like, "Get rid of it." And I was like, "Okay." And so I've been red ever since. But I think it's funny. It got somebody from a Marvel company to reach out to me and be like, "Do you want to guest on this show?" And then like the scheduling never worked out.
Mm.
But
Really? That's awesome.
yeah, but yeah, it's fun. But shout out to Pandamus though for representing me in a comic before.
That's
Hell
awesome.
yes.
Panda Musk is great.
So
Shout out for
let's
sure.
say 2 more questions and then I
We
have to
actually
boogie.
we actually have one more, and I think it's
Okay.
Alice.
Mine is from Vitz Patel, who I met for the first time at the What's Good London
Yeah,
meetup.
Viz. What's up, Viz?
Vitz. He says, "What are some of the games you're looking forward to introducing your daughter to in the future?"
That's a good question. Obviously, classic Super Mario Brothers. It's what I started on. It still
Yeah.
holds up today. It's one of the best platformers ever created. So that's definitely something that she's going to learn to play. And because her dad helped create it, Rock Band obviously has to be part of her repertoire someday.
For a
We'll
second, I
teach
didn't
her
know there was a
kids.
I didn't know there was a break there, and I was like, "John made Mario? What?"
No,
so
Rock
confused.
Band.
Oh,
Oh my
bless.
goodness. So that's a game, but that'll come probably, much later when she's big enough to hold the guitar. But and then eventually, I would like to introduce her to Mass Effect because it was one of the RPGs that was most impactful on my life, and it was at a very, like, kind of pivotal point in my on-camera video game career when I was starting to really get some big opportunities, and I remember being asked to come speak on a panel for Spike TV for the Video Game Awards, and that was the year that Mass Effect 2 was up for Game of the Year, and I hadn't heard of Mass Effect and didn't know what Mass Effect was, and I had to do all this research and then go play the game, obviously. And it really kind of like started a new chapter of my career in video games reporting. And so those are probably 3 games that I would pick to shed a little light.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been absolutely amazing. We've obviously absolutely loved this. I can't believe that you agreed to come on.
One thing
Oh
real quick.
no, it was fun. I'm sorry I talk a lot, but you knew
No,
that
that's
when
the
you,
whole point.
you knew that when you
Awesome.
invited me to be on the
Awesome.
show.
Wait,
Ben,
Gage has something. Gage
Ben,
has-
did you change your icon during the show?
You did. You
Sure
did.
did.
You
No.
did.
I changed it half an hour before the show. I don't know why it's just updated now. Classic Discord, you know.
But is there
Exactly.
anything else
Very
you'd like to say, or anything like you'd like to promote before we send off?
Just come listen to What's Good Games. If you haven't yet, you can find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you hit that subscribe button, it really helps us out. If you guys want to check out the show, like please do. What'sgoodgames.com is a good way to find all of our different platforms. If you want to follow me at Andrea Rene on Twitter is the best place to do so, to find all of the different things that I'm into. I always post my links there. And just, keep on keeping on. It's been tough. It's been a really hard 18 months for all of us around the world in the pandemic. And I think a lot of times we sometimes like retreat into ourselves when we're under a lot of stress, myself included. And it's important to remember that there's a whole community of people out there that are willing to support you and be there to help you shoulder the tough stuff. And it's okay to ask for help. And video games is a great way to find those people. So hopefully you have that spot in your life to keep that positive beacon of light shining for you.
Awesome. Thank you
Perfect
so much for
example.
coming on the show today. If you liked the
Yeah.
show, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, continue listening to us on your favorite podcast services, which we are now available on. And yeah, thank you so much for watching today. Have a great day.